Hello to the people who are gone. I forgot to record today, so now I'm after school recording right now. My son is standing next to me, being very quiet, aren't you, Xander? Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing the notes with you, I'm going to have you copy this down, and then I'm going to talk about it. So this is 1.3 Experimental Design, Day 1, 919. We're going to be talking about experimental design for quite a few days. So after you've written this out, go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to write down these 6 things. And then I'm going to talk about it. So go ahead and pause. All right, I'm assuming that you paused at this point and that you've written it down. And if you haven't, you're going to have to go back and do it. But these are the steps to designing a study. The first thing you have to do is you have to identify exactly what you want to study, and make sure that the data you're collecting actually measures that. If you want to know how happy somebody is before and after taking a pill, it might not be enough just to ask them. Maybe you need to observe them in some behavior or have some other kind of measurement in that kind of way. So you have to really figure out exactly what you want to study and what data would match that. Then you have to develop a detailed plan for collecting the data. This needs to be a plan that is easy to follow, that you can do the exact same way every time. And your sample has to match your population. So if you are trying to get data about who somebody's going to vote for president, and you go outside the Republican National Convention, and you only ask Republicans leaving the National Convention who they want to be president, they're probably going to choose a Republican. But that doesn't match the whole United States, because the whole United States aren't Republican. So you need to have a sample that is similar to the whole United States, if you wanted to talk about specifically that. 3 is just following the plan, doing the grunt work, collecting the data, so going to get the data. 4, you've got to describe the data using numbers or graphs to show other people what you've learned. This is facts right here. This is facts, and this is not. The 5th step is interpreting the data and using inferential statistics to make a guess about the population. So this is where you're looking at your sample and trying to make a guess about the population based on that sample. And then finally, the most important thing in any study is to identify any errors. You may realize once the study's done that the whole thing is bogus and that you can't use any of your information, and that is an important thing to know. So I'm always into people learning stuff, even if it's after you do something. So make sure that you tell me if you notice that something's wrong. I'm recording right now. Great job, Zandy. The second part of these notes is the 4 types of data collection. This is how you could get your data. You can do a survey where you ask people what they feel about something. Here you're going to get a lot of opinions and probably a lot of lies, because people can easily just skip things on a form or choose not to answer them or lie to you about how they feel about something. And people often do on surveys, even when they are anonymous, people will still lie. Observational study, that is watching and no interfering. So that means that you are only going to be watching something that's happening, but definitely not interfering in any way. This is really good for anything in nature, like if you're trying to figure out the parenting habits of gorillas, then watching them would be what you should do, not interfering. An experiment is where you do interfere. This one you have to have a control group and an experimental group. The control group you don't change, and the experimental group you change one thing to compare it to the control group to see if it made a difference. You can't change more than one thing, because then you won't know what caused the result you got. The final choice you have is called a simulation. A simulation is when it's too dangerous or expensive or unreasonable to do an experiment. This is something like crash test dummies, It'd be pretty unreasonable and dangerous to put a family of 4 in a minivan and drive them against a wall. So instead, we have crash test dummies that are a simulation of what the human experience would be like. Or this, like if we were doing a earthquake test on a building, we wouldn't just build a bad building and then wait for an earthquake to happen to see what happens. We make a model and do it that way. So make sure you pause the video and add these 4 as well. Your homework for tonight is writing down 4 additional examples. So I said like a survey about asking people who they want to be president. You tell me what another survey would be about, and don't be like, who would be the vice president? I don't want you to just slightly change my answer. Observational study, I said like the parenting habits of gorillas. That would be an observational study. Anything where you're watching and not interfering is an observational study. Again, don't just be like, the parenting habits of chimpanzees. Experiment, that's something, it could be a medicine, it could be lots of different things are experiments. But you need to come up with an example. In a simulation, I used crash test dummies, and I also used earthquakes. But you need to come up with your own example for all 4 of something that it could be like, and that's your homework for tomorrow. Bye.